Today, I'm starting my top 50 favorite board games of all time series. And I last did this and completed it 4 years ago, so there's hundreds of new games fighting for a spot, and loads of old favorites which have fallen off the list. I'm making this series for two important reasons. The first is that I've just had a baby, or at least I will have by the time this is released. I'm filming these ahead of time so you have something to watch while I'm getting to grips with being a dad for the first time. And the second is to ask for your support. Actualol is my full-time job. It's how I make a living. So if you enjoyed my 10 reason board games are better now, or my games of the year or etiquette rules videos, and you want to help me make more videos like that, please become a patron of the channel. And in return, I'm making 5 videos especially for my patrons, in which I'll share the rest of my top 100, games 51 to 100. And you can watch the first video today by becoming a patron at patreon.com/actualol. Before we start, I want to say this is a very personalized list. These are my top 50, but they're definitely not for everyone. I've made the mistake so many times of buying games from other reviewers' top 50 lists and regretted it. Whereas my top 10 couples games and gateway games videos are recommendations for everyone that I swear by. But this list is only meant for deceptively tall men from Salisbury who don't enjoy hot drinks. And the last I checked, Joseph Fiennes does. But if you're convinced that we're gaming soulmates and you do want to buy one of these games, I've put links in the description below. And number 50 is Tobago. And this is unlike any other game in my collection. You're treasure hunting on an island, but first you're trying to work out where the treasure is, and then you're trying to get to it before the other players. And for each treasure, there are rules that you are creating to whittle down where the treasure can be on the island. So it's like a deduction game, but instead of the game telling you these rules, you're applying them to the treasures by playing cards. You'll play a card onto a treasure that says it's in the largest forest. So you now know that it has to be somewhere in this largest forest. And then later, someone else will play a card saying it's next to a hut. So you know it's next to one of the 2 huts in that forest. You're whittling down where it could be, eliminating possibilities. And eventually you get to a point where there's only one place it could be. And then you're racing to get there first so you can claim the most of the treasure. That creates a really interesting puzzle, working out how to play your cards so it best suits you. And there's a really interesting balance between playing those rule cards onto the treasures and getting around the map so that you're closest to the treasures when they get found. If they get there before you, they're just gonna get so much more gold than you. And the treasure finding itself is a really interesting bluffing push your luck mini game, where the person who did the most effort towards finding that treasure will get to see the most cards. So they know what treasure's in the loot, then it gets shuffled up and you take it in turns to accept or reject what you're seeing. So the person that's seen the most knows what's coming up. They know what to wait for. The other people don't know whether they should take this 4 now or reject it because there's going to be something better later. And to make that even spicier, there's a curse card that can come up which ends that round and means that you'll lose a card that you already had. I love that it combines this thinky puzzle with this excitement and drama and tension of the treasure finding. You just don't get that in many games, and it does it without ever feeling like one is ruined by the other, and with a remarkably simple rule set. That's why Tobago is my number 50. Number 49 is Sons of Anarchy, Men of Mayhem, and this is a negotiation game. And a common theme that you'll learn from this series is that I love negotiation games, but I just don't have enough people to play them with. They're mean, they're aggressive, they're really interactive, and a lot of people just don't like that style of game. And often you need quite a lot of people to be able to play them and like really enjoy it. You need enough people to bribe and blackmail and interact with. So these aren't good at 2 or 3 players. You want 4 or 5. Sons of Anarchy is based on the TV show, and you play it as a motorcycle gang trying to get the most money. And you do that by going to locations in the town, sending your gang members there and controlling it to sell drugs or sell guns or buy guns to try and get more money. But the trouble is all the other gang members want to go to those locations as well. So other players are going to send their people there, and then you're going to get into a fight. There's so many neat thematic touches to this game because if you're in a fight, you can use guns, which will injure the other player's gang members means they end up in the hospital and they might not make it out again. But if you use guns, you'll get heat, which is the police noticing your actions, and that's going to make it harder for you to do stuff, such as selling drugs on the black market every round. So then you'll make less money. So you've got to decide, is it good for business to be that aggressive? And the game doesn't encourage bad behavior as much as you think it would. It actually often serves to fly under the radar, do the things that the other players aren't doing, because getting into fights is a waste of time and resources. Like any good negotiation game, you can trade anything in the game. You can give them money or drugs to leave your location alone. You can threaten to use a gun against them so that they won't start a fight with you. I have watched the whole TV series, which is surprisingly good in the first couple of seasons and then surprisingly bad in the last few. And it does a really good job of bringing that theme to life. But it's also not a turn-off for people that haven't seen it. I think the theme really works on its own. But nowadays, you can't get this version. There is a new version of the same game called Wise Guys, which is about prohibition gangsters in the 1920s. I've played it, and it's the same game. It's really good, but I slightly prefer the original theme, which I think just comes to life that bit more. And number 48 is QE, and this is an auction game with a really cool twist. And that is that you can bid any amount of money you like. You're playing as a big nation trying to bail out companies, and you're bidding on these companies in secret, writing any amount of money that you want, because you can print your own currency. So you can decide how much to inflate your economy. If you're the person at the end of the game who spent the most amount of money, then you are eliminated. You have inflated your economy too far and you've gone bust. So you're trying to get the most amount of points by spending a huge amount of money so that you'll outbid other people, but not so much that you go bust and completely lose the game. I love games like that where you can just get to the end of the game and one person has no chance of winning. It creates such a dramatic finish because in this, you don't know what the other players have bid. So you don't know if you're going to be the one going out. So there's this big reveal at the end of the game where you realize, oh, you just made it. But then do you still have enough points? And there's this crazy like arms race thing of the currency just going up. You'll start by bidding in the tens or hundreds. By the end of the game, you'll be at millions or billions because you're just trying to beat the other players. You're trying to jump above them, but everyone's bidding in secret. So you have no idea where that bar is. And sometimes you can jump way too high, not read the room. Every round, a different player plays the auctioneer. So they get to see the secret bids and determine who won. So they get an idea of where everyone else's heads are at. The way you get points is from the companies that you win at auction. And there's some really great incentives to make you want to win certain auctions. You've got companies that are your nationality. You get extra points if you win those. You can also diversify, have a large portfolio of different industries, or monopolize one industry. Either of those directions is going to get you more points and then make you want to win other companies in the future. And there's a great bonus for being the player that spends the least throughout the game. So you really want to be trying to get bargains, just like any auction game. But this crazy thing that you don't know what anyone else is bidding and you're in the dark just pushes everyone up. It creates this tension, this need to get something, because you can go many rounds without winning any auctions and having no idea what everyone else is bidding. I love that about the game. It's so much more exciting than other auction games. It has such a unique feel for an auction game. It's really simple to get into, it's quick, and it just packs a punch like nothing else. That's QE. And number 47 is Chinatown. And this is another negotiation game, but this is a much simpler one. This is possibly one of the most purist negotiation games you can play. You're trying to open businesses in Chinatown and make the most money. Every round, everyone is given a set of buildings on the map somewhere. So you'll draw a card, it says 21, so you'll place one of your markers on that spot on the board. You now own that. Then you're also going to draw shop tiles from the bag. These are shops that you can open on the buildings that you own. And ideally, you want a lot of spots that are adjacent to each other because you want to create a shop that's big enough to be completed. So as soon as you open a shop, you're going to start making money for it. But if you're able to complete it, to build it to its biggest size, then you're going to get way more money in income every turn. So a laundry needs 5 laundry shop tiles adjacent to each other to be considered completed, whereas something like the seafood place only needs 3. You're going to make more money off of the laundry, but the seafood place is easier to complete because you only need 3 adjacent spaces and 3 seafood shop tiles. So when you're given your buildings and your shop tiles, then it is just mass negotiation. You can trade with anyone in the game, and you can trade for money, shop tiles, and building locations. And you're just trying to get yourself in a position that is going to make you the most money. Everyone else is trying to do the same. You're desperate to get the building spots that are adjacent to the ones they already own, or get the shop tiles that they really need to complete the shops that they've already started. And that's the whole game. The rules are really simple, but the difficulty comes in working out what's a good deal and trying to get a good deal from the other players, negotiating so that you end up on top. I really like that simplicity because you could teach it to anyone. You still need to like negotiation, but this is definitely on the softer, more welcoming side of these types of games. There's definitely some luck present. If you draw a building that's adjacent to yours, you don't need to worry about making any deals. You've got exactly what you need. And if you draw next to someone else, they're now going to owe you a lot of money to try and get it from you. It's not my favorite negotiation game ever, but in terms of a streamlined package of trying to get the best deal and make the most money, this game is by far the best. And number 46 is 878 Vikings Invasion of England. This is a war game. In fact, it's the only war game that I own. I really like war games in theory, but I just never find myself in a position to play a long, heavy 2-player game. I like to play big multiplayer games, which is why this one suits me, because this is a 2 versus 2 team game. 2 people will play as the English trying to ward off the Viking invasion, and another 2 people will play as the Viking factions trying to invade and conquer enough towns of England to win the game. It's part of a wider series of team war games from Academy Games, which I previously played 1812 Invasion of Canada. I got rid of that one because I prefer this, but I've never tried 1775 Rebellion about the War of American Independence, and I'd really like to try that because it's also a 2 versus 2 team game. You each have your own faction and type of unit. So the Vikings have the red Berserkers and the black Norsemen, and the English have the blue Housecarls and the green Thanes. They have different strengths. There's more Norsemen than there are Berserkers, but the Berserkers are stronger. They have more powerful dice. They're more likely to roll hits. And that's one of the things I love about this game, is it packs decisions into interesting parts of the game. The factions have a different number of dice, so you can only roll this many dice in combat, and you roll as many as you have units. But if you had 3 red Berserkers, you still only get to roll 2 dice, whereas the Norsemen, these are less powerful dice, but you will always get to roll 3 of them as long as you have 3 units. Now, the Norsemen are more plentiful as well, so they tend to work as a fodder, and when the opposing team attacks you and kills you, you can decide which units to lose. So at every point, there's decisions to make. How many units of each faction are you going to send in? Who are you then going to kill off? And how is that going to change whether you're attacking or defending? Some of the dice have a flee symbol on, which means that the unit literally runs away out of battle and you lose them. Now, the Berserkers would never flee, so that's not on their dice, but the English are much more likely to flee. So every time you're in combat, you can end up losing a bunch of units, but they might become useful to you later. It's simple mechanisms that manages to add thought to the game, but theme at the same time. Of course, the Vikings aren't going to run away from battle, whereas the English are cowards. I love how the team play works in this game. You can see each other's hand of cards on these card stands. You can discuss strategy plans, but ultimately you get the final decision when you're moving your people. You can take your fellow faction with you when you move into a region, as long as they give you permission. And that's a thing that's going to happen a lot in the game, pulling the other people along to start a new fight. It takes what would usually be a 2-player game where you're just going to be in your head a lot, thinking through a strategy, to something that's a lot more social. I get to talk to this person next to me, whisper ideas to them, point at their cards. It just makes it, for me, a much more interesting experience. I play games to socialize and I really enjoy having someone on my team to share this with. I love that the system is so simple that it just gets out the way. Once you've learnt the rules, you're not going back into the rulebook for all these intricacies. You just get down to the strategy and the experience and the drama of the game. In the past, I used to have Memoir 44, a 2-player war game, but I got rid of it because I found that the luck of the card draw and the dice was just a bit too swingy and punishing. And there's something about this that seems more satisfying, that it's not so dependent on luck, that the decisions do matter. I actually play Memoir 44 all the time now on Board Game Arena, and I prefer it on there because it does a lot of the admin, a lot of the thought to the game is taken care of by the computer, whereas in this, it doesn't have those extra terrain rules and working out how many dice you've got to roll in this situation and how many hits you've got. It's a lot more straightforward in terms of just quick turns. And really, that means that the time spent is in strategy and not in game admin. I don't play it a lot because it's on the longer side. It's going to take you at least 2 or 3 hours to play. But I'm really glad that I have it in my collection because it offers something completely different. Number 45 is Blue Lagoon, which is a tile laying game from my favorite designer, Reiner Knizia. The idea is that you're settling this archipelago of islands, but so are the other players as well. You're trying to get your tribespeople in the right places to get the most points. Turns are incredibly simple. You take one of your tiles and place it on the board. This represents your tribes turning up to one of the islands. So at the start of the game, you'll be placing boats down in the water and then expanding out from where you already are. There are multiple ways to get points, and you're trying to do it all at once. You'll get points for being on all of the islands. You get points for connecting up a big path of all of your people to as many islands as possible. Each island will score points for the player who has the most people there. And you can get points from these resources that you collect by putting a tile on that spot. You'll be trying to create a perfect unbroken path connecting all the islands, but that's what everyone else is trying to do, so you can't all do it. At some point, one of you is going to block the other off. And that's what I love about the game, that you've really got to consider what the other players are doing and where they're going to cause you problems. You'll be competing with one player over here and another over here. So if this one moves and goes for that resource you want to race and catch up with them, but then you also need to catch up with them. It means that every decision is important, that by taking one thing, you're effectively giving up on something else. You're choosing to take your eye off the ball, and that means you're going to lose it. I love that you're playing on a shared board, that every turn there's something to think about, but with almost no rules. That's Blue Lagoon. And number 44 is Air, Land and Sea. This is a really simple 2-player card game in which there is only 18 cards, and you are trying to win control of 2 out of the 3 of the theatres of war. Air, land, and sea. And so you're given 6 cards, only 6 cards for a round. You don't draw back up, you play those 6 cards, and it's the order in which you play them and how you play them that will determine how well you do. The magic of the game comes in the powers on these cards and how they interact with each other. You can play a card face down into a non-matching theatre and then use another card to flip it back up, so it's now full strength. You can use a card to flip over an opponent's card. There are cards that will score off adjacent theatres. It's really clever the way that these 18 cards play with each other, and you'll see the same cards over and over again and get really used to them, but never get bored of them because the order in which they come out, the difference between the hand that you have, the hand that they have, just makes every round feel that bit different. And the brilliant mechanism of the game is that if you think you can't win this round, that you can see that they're stronger than you in 2 of those 3 theatres, and you don't think you have the cards to beat that, you can withdraw from the battle. You can surrender. They will win that battle, but you're stopping them from getting loads of points from it. If you stay right till the end, you stick it out, you're bullish and you just think, yeah, I can still win this, then they're going to get 6 full points if they win. This is my kind of 2-player game. It's head to head. You're trying to outthink your opponent, but yet it's short, it's simple. You could play it in a pub, take it on holiday. You could teach it to a friend in 5 minutes and get them up to speed, but there's still thought to it and strategy. You really feel like every decision counts. This is a rarity in my collection because I almost exclusively play 2-player games with my wife, and she doesn't like this game. So This is the only 2-player game I've kept that she doesn't like because I like it so much. The withdrawing from battle and the way the cards play with each other, but the fact that you can get to know them and understand them just means I really, really enjoy this game. And number 43 is Clank. This is a deck building game with a board. You're adventurers going into a dungeon, trying to get the most loot, and then get out before the dragon kills you. I don't typically love deck building games, and this is the only one in my top 50. And what I like about it is that you're not just deck building for deck building's sake. You've got this board that is telling the story of your adventure. You're trying to get as deep as you can to get the best artifacts and then escape in time. But the deck is governing your ability to do that. You have to draw movement cards if you're going to progress in the dungeon. And as you build up that deck, you're building up your abilities of what you'll be able to do. So if you want to go down pathways with monsters, you're going to need swords to be able to defeat them, or otherwise you're going to take wounds. If you want to move fast and get further down, then you're going to want to have lots of movement symbols in your deck. There's an amazing push or luck aspect to this game. The deeper you go, the better stuff you'll get, but the longer you're going to be in the dungeon. And the longer you're in, you're going to create clank, which is noise. And the noise wakes up the dragon. And so every time the dragon attacks, you pull these cubes from the bag. And if they pull out your color cube, that goes onto your health track and you're getting closer to death. If you die, that's it. It's game over. But if you die above ground, you'll survive. You'll get the points that you have. Whereas if you die in the dungeon's depths, you get 0 points. So it's amazing level of jeopardy because you really want to risk it and get the best artifacts. But can you just get above ground level just in time before you get killed by the dragon? This kind of generic fantasy theme isn't usually my bag, but Clank does such a great job of evoking that theme in the actions that you do and the mechanisms of the game that you really get that feel. I also really like Quest for El Dorado, which is another deck building race game. Quite similar to Clank. I think at the moment, I still slightly prefer the drama of potentially getting killed. Number 42 is Dead of Winter. This is a zombie survival game that creates stories. You're trying to survive and kill off the zombies and hoard things for your colony. You're trying to collect food and gas and medicine to be able to survive. You're having to go out to locations to collect these items. Meanwhile, the zombies are attacking you and you're trying to fight them off. Each player has their own little posse of characters and you each have your own secret objective. You're trying to collect something of your own. You might be a librarian that's trying to collect books, or you might be someone that really wants lots of guns. And so you're trying to go out and collect them and keep them to yourself and not tell the other players. Because if they knew that you were hoarding all this stuff and wasting your time on your own objective, they would get annoyed because you have this group objective that you're trying to achieve, or else you can't win the game. It's this really interesting balance between working towards the group, but also being selfish for your own needs. Because if you don't do both, you won't win the game. One player might be a secret traitor and they just want complete collapse. They are trying to sow dissent in the group. They're trying to get people killed. They're trying to lower morale. So you're trying to watch what everyone else is doing and understand, are they just being selfish for their own secret goal, or are they actually trying to bring about the collapse of the group? It's such a great dynamic because you're watching what everyone else is doing and you're discussing everything at all times because it works like a cooperative game. You need to coordinate movement so that this person goes to the police station to get the guns that you need to kill the zombies, but someone else needs to worry about the food that we're going to need, or otherwise we're all going to starve. There's so many impending problems that you all have to solve that it really requires that classic cooperative puzzle and discussion. But at the same time, you're trying to be a bit covert towards your secret objective, and that creates this brilliant air of mystery and mistrust, which is perfect for the theme. It really does feel like The Walking Dead or a zombie movie where everyone is out for their own interests, and for good reason, because not everyone's going to be able to survive. Everything you do in the game fits that story. You can search for longer at the police station to find a gun, but you have to make noise to rummage around, and that's likely to attract more zombies. Zombies are going to turn up at locations where humans are because they've heard them or smelt them, and if they get overrun by zombies, the humans are going to die. If a human attacks a zombie without a weapon, they have to roll this red die. And if they roll the bite symbol, which I just did by accident, then they have been bitten. And not only do they die, but that bite could then spread to other characters in the group. Another huge aspect of the story are the crossroads cards. Every single turn, the player next to you will pick up a crossroads card, which will activate if you do certain things in the game. And then you read a little story and something will happen, something big, like a horse shows up, or you find some kids in an abandoned warehouse. And then you have to make a big moral decision about what you're gonna do. Are you gonna take those kids in? Are you gonna kill and eat that horse? Or are you gonna use the horse to move around? Everything will have an impact, positive and negative. And sometimes you want to follow the story because you're really into it. And sometimes you're just being really calculating and you're just worried about what's going to get you the most food. I love that the game revolves around these characters that you send out to places and that they can die. And they have names and jobs and artwork. This is some of my favorite artwork in any game from Fernanda Suarez, because I feel like character art is very rarely done well in board games. But in this, it really brings them to life. And that focus on the characters brings the story to life. You don't see it often in games, but it's so important to you to keep certain characters alive. And having one of them die is so much more than just like losing a cube in any other game. This means something. You might have had them for half the game and now you've lost them because someone else was being selfish. As a semi-cooperative game, it can sometimes feel a bit fragile, that some games can seem really easy because there wasn't a traitor. Other games can seem insanely hard, even without a traitor, because of the way the luck plays out. I think it's just incredibly hard to pull off a game like this. And I don't think there's a better example of it than Dead of Winter. I think that everything else you get from it in terms of storytelling, but also that mystery, the bluffing of your secret objectives, just elevates it to a level where it's worth taking the risk. It's worth having the odd fragile game, because when it delivers, it's just amazing. And number 41 is Parks, a game about hiking the national parks of America. And in this game, you are going to be moving your pawns along the trail, trying to collect resources that you need to cash in for national park cards that are going to get you points. So you're trying to get the most points, but you're trying to do it in the most efficient way possible. And when you move along this trail, you can only ever go forward. So you can jump forward as far as you want, but you can never go back later. The trail gives you some really interesting decisions. Every spot is going to get you a resource or do something good that you want. But sometimes if you're working towards certain park cards, if your objective is telling you you need them, then you'll want some a lot more than others. And you can never share a space with another character. So you might jump ahead to get that spot before anyone else can grab it and get in your way. But if you take your time and go slowly, you're more likely to get more resources in the long run. It's a really interesting dynamic of getting exactly what you want right now, but losing out on kind of seeing the world, that kind of patience that maybe comes with hiking. So you can get to the end of the trail, beat someone else, you win that race, but maybe the person that took their time and took in the landscape actually gets more out of it in the long run. Despite it being a gorgeous game, it's slightly deeper than you'd imagine. You have these gear cards that you can get, which act as an engine to improve your powers. So if I had this one, Parks would now cost me one less water resource, so I can get things cheaper. You have these canteen cards, so you could trade in a water to get a mountain, which is a much rarer resource. And you've also got objectives that you're working towards. You're trying to collect certain types of park cards before the end of the game. For me, Parks is at its best at 3, 4, or 5 players when there's more people to get in your way and create that frustration, because it means there's a bigger importance on the decisions you're making. It doesn't hurt that this is one of the best looking games in my collection, but that's not the reason it stuck around. I really like the decision making in this game and how dependent it is on what the other players are going to do. So those were my 50 to 41 favorite board games of all time. If you like this video, please subscribe to see the next video in this series, and please become a patron of the channel to see the rest of my top 100 list, the first video of which is available right now. I'm John Perkis, thanks for watching.